In this episode of the Changemakers podcast, we sit down with Scott Evans. You may know Scott from hosting shows like Access Hollywood, The World of Dance, and Couple to Throuple. But I know him as a lifelong friend and my brother. We talk about the power of taking responsibility in your life, how being yourself is actually the key to creating the life and career of your dreams, and that reaching for your potential isn't the key to your success, but rather it's raising your standards that changes your life. And not to mention a moment where Scott and I get so vulnerable, it brings us both to tears. I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. And if you do, please like, share, and follow so more like you can learn how to live a more authentic life. Enjoy. I would love to know first, for anyone who doesn't know you, right? Or maybe is aware of, the work that you're doing now and some of the things that you've accomplished in recent years, I would love to hear from you. How would you describe where you come from? What was the beginning for you?
That's such an interesting question. How would I describe where I come from? And I say interesting because it's you really you throw one off with that. You know what I mean? It's not like, how do you describe you or what you do? How do you describe your path? But where you come from, I was surrounded at a very young age. From what I can remember, I was surrounded by examples of brilliance, people who were seemed to be in their flow, in walking in authority, working in community and collaboration with other people. In particular, this community was Black. And so I was able to see from a very young age and believe and almost assume that whatever I wanted, however I wanted it, whatever my dream was, it was due to me, right? Because I was willing to work it out. I was willing to walk that path. I didn't have this idea. People talk about how, the representation matters is this thing that people keep saying, and this phrase that people rely on or fall back to or iterate in their speeches and all kinds of stuff, right? Every room you've been in, if there is someone who is not white, if they are Black, brown, Asian, or otherwise, people talk about representation mattering or how much it matters. And so I had that from a really young age. I had that examples of people seeking with success their purpose, right? Following in success their purpose. So growing up in Indianapolis, being born in New Jersey, and growing up in Indianapolis, and for some time, earlier in life, going back and forth, but for the most part, growing up really in Indianapolis, I was surrounded by people who were doing it. And so I remember being booked on my first gig. Stacy Paetz, our sister, booked me on this gig where she believes it was a young Reggie Miller. She believes it was a young Michael Jordan. I believed somehow that it was a young Reggie Miller. And for some reason, I was like, I don't know how I look like Reggie Miller, but I will take it because I got a day out of school and I got $50. $50 to play? And so, we played this, it was the player intro video for the Indiana Pacers, with the thing that comes on right before the players come out. And I remember being in the car on the ride home with her, and I was like, this is what I want to do. She was like, of course the Gardeners are going to start now. She was
That's not what she said. That's what you're saying.
Yes, that's what I was
okay. I was like, that's a weird response, Stacey.
You're right. That wasn't very clear. The Gardeners are about to start now, literally now in this life. But in this memory, I remember saying to Stacey, this is what I want to do, I want to do this. I want to be this every day. And I remember her kind of looking at me like, okay, don't be weird. But I also remember her very specifically saying, then you will. You know what I mean? Then you will. And so I had a lot of experiences like that as a kid where I said something or I identified something or was curious about something, and I was encouraged to go in pursuit of it. I was thrust into after school programs that developed my storytelling ability on camera. And we launched a television show when I was in middle school that aired on the MTV2 affiliate in Indianapolis called 360 Degrees. Youth directed and produced TV for teens. And I what I know now is that if we were submitting for Emmys, we were definitely doing Emmy caliber work in middle school and high school as students. But we were talking about everything from teen homelessness to school, dating, sex. We were winning grants from city initiatives to help inform young people about how to protect their bodies, what sexual health meant for young people, and to help tell stories that they couldn't seem to connect with. And so was also seeing some success in that. I was interviewing celebrities in middle school. Do you know what I mean? As they came through summer celebration in Indianapolis. I interviewed Destiny's Child in middle school. Middle school. John Legend when I was in high school. Do you know what I mean? So I think I think in order to describe what it was like for me, where I come from, I had great examples of what it meant and what could be found on the other side of pursuing your heart's desire. I also had profound examples of what it looked like to not, what it looked like to delay, what it looked like to defer. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want that. And so I and many members of my family made sure that I had and would be out and after this thing as quickly and as soon as possible and as relentlessly as possible.
So on that note too, because I'm sitting there listening and I would love to hear a little more about what do you mean that you also had other examples who were avoiding and deferring and whatever that means, their dreams, their goals, their desires, their truths, all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because, and listen to that, it sounds like, you were surrounded by a lot of positivity, right? Yeah. But I also know that there was another truth to kind of much of where you came from and the experiences that you may have had to endure, right? So I'd be very curious, like, for anyone out there that believes their current circumstance is the thing that's keeping them from being able to relentlessly pursue whatever it is for them, like, how would you go about, sharing your story with that person?
Well, I would say first, I don't know that everyone needs to. That's the way I described what my initial like kind of getting this thing going, relentless pursuit. I don't know that everybody's dream requires that. I don't know that everyone's passion or purpose or desire or curiosity desires relentless pursuit. But I know that I was up against some major hurdles, some major obstacles that required me to feel like I was like, I'm going after this thing. And that's what energized me. That's what empowered me and encouraged me. So, I mean, I think that first I would find a way to describe very clearly what it is you want in your life, to be able to see that thing very clearly in your life. But I think that fear is a big part of this experience. You know what I mean? This human thing. And so I'm not necessarily of the mind of you need to separate yourself from ever experiencing fear, that you need to. I had my first tattoo was I believe in some Asian language, go without fear is probably like Tuesday. But I'm just being honest. It could probably, right. I don't know what it could.
They got those. Their stories King. Exist.
It could say Burger King. I don't know. I really don't know. But its intention was go without fear. And what I learned sometime after that was that it's not about going without it. It's about going hand in hand. Like, okay, fear, gotcha. You going with us. You know what I mean? Come along. I'm of the mind, and I've shared this with you before. I'm of the mind that fear, the right kind of fear, the right response to fear, keeps you alert. It keeps you upright. It keeps you activated. You know what I mean? That paralyzing kind of fear, what we do with fear and allowing us to stop or never go, is something different. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that, for me, the relentless pursuit was about digging in and consistently checking back in with myself and saying, is this still the dream? Is this still the desire? Is this still what you want? Even though none of it looks like what you thought it would right now, are you comfortable with or good with continuing to walk this thing out? Is what you're feeling right now worth the next few steps? Because I wasn't really ever of the mind of like, okay, when I get on, then I will. I never really saw it like that. I needed to feel it. I needed to see some elements of the dream happening. Something had to happen now. Something needed to activate and feel familiar, or feel like a part of that, pointing to that in some sort of way now. And so when those things didn't necessarily happen that way, I also had to ask myself the question, like, are you good? If this is what it feels like, this is where we at. You good with this? You good with this? To try to avoid those scenarios where you have to work a job that you hate. I fortunately have not been in a situation where I really have had to work a job that I hate. And if I have put it so far out of my mind that I can't even necessarily recall it that way.
I love this. And what I'm hearing you describe is very, very powerful, which is you're not speaking to circumstances. You're not speaking to challenges as a sign of like wrongdoing or failure. One thing that was very interesting in working with people in my own experience, like I'm someone who, it's taken a long time for me to develop a relationship with struggle, with challenge, or fear even, that I interpret those things now as the green light, the direction, versus doing something and being met with challenge or being met with some sort of feedback or rejection and seeing that as further evidence as why I shouldn't be going in that direction. Right. And just listening to you, it's apparent to me that from the very beginning, your perspective, your interpretation of the challenges was that they motivated you versus deterred you. Right? And
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, growing up in Indiana as a young Black boy, their challenge, you can't look at as challenge as never go past this as like or a boundary. Like you can't look at someone saying no, you cannot, or no, this is not for you, or you do not belong, as somehow the truth you must live by. And so it was always about finding ways in. It was always about finding some other option. It was always about like, okay, so if this is showing up this way, if this is the no here, where is the yes? And if it's not anywhere here, how do I create it? Do you know what I mean? I saw examples of that. Yeah, I saw examples of that like as a kid. Reverend Williams turning this organization, Indiana Black Expo, into the largest, longest running cultural exposition of its time. Was not easy, but I remember sitting in meetings when they were trying to figure out how we're going to pay for this. Well, what sponsor is going to be necessary for this? And if we want to be able to highlight this artist, but this money isn't over here, can we use some sort of the fund, or can we generate some sort of fundraiser that will allow us to not only bring this person in, but highlight them in the way that we believe they deserve, as they're gonna as they are this emerging artist. And I'm using those as like very specific examples, but those are the kinds of conversations that I was around as a kid.
That you witnessed.
People looking for the solution, people looking for ways to collaborate, people looking for how, not only ways to lift themselves up, but like everyone around them, or as many people around them. You know, I learned what it meant to be in community at a very young age. And it is something that I'm finding now, as other people are even pointing out to me now, it is something now that is informed, or that is informing many of my professional choices, but also how I show up professionally, how I show up in my personal life. You know, I think that I probably focused more on my development professionally than I have personally, and now trying to bring that back into a better alignment. You know, applying those same principles to my personal life. But
well, that's the
yeah,
key,
man.
right there. Like I'm going to challenge that. Although you may have chosen the path of profession, committed to that path, initially, your personal development was required for you to reach any significant milestone.
I hear
Right.
that. I'll receive
Right.
that.
And now you are, it sounds like you've reached a place where your personal life is coming more into focus, right? And you're learning, like you said, how to apply the personal growth that you've acquired, you've earned professionally now into your life personally, right? Because the success in our personal life is earned as well, right? And
Yeah.
we may talk about personal and professional lives, but they're really just the same life being expressed in two different lanes, right? So there's no way that one can, improve themselves in one area and it not impact the other,
Show up. Yeah.
right? Now, the
Yeah.
key is being conscious of the lesson instead of just the context, right?
Ooh.
Because it's principle. Like
That's a
courage in
word.
one is still courage in the other, but you just have to be willing to lean in. And it's something you were saying earlier. I keep notes around me all the time, but here's one that really stuck out, because we were talking about your interpretation of challenge being something that you saw as like the motivator, the inspiration. Like the challenge wasn't a hurdle; it was let's get it. Like that's let's go for it. And I can relate to this, what I'm about to say, which is I have written here: children who have not been taught to face challenges will avoid all challenges. Right?
Yeah.
And, in reflection of my own life, there's a lot of things that I recognize that didn't come, that I received that didn't come as a challenge to me per se.
Right.
Yeah. And I've carried a lot of guilt for that, to be quite honest. I've carried a lot of guilt for my advantages, for my privileges. And the more aware that I've become that they existed, in my life, the more guilty and shame sometimes that I've carried for having them, and even felt that it would be inappropriate of me to leverage them. Right. So, but in hearing that, and the shift for me is, I think it's what's the intention? Like, is it just for self, right? Or is growing for self with the intention of being of value to other, right? And I think there's a fine line there. And I think a lot of people talk about selfishness. Like, I'm afraid to be selfish, but I think there's a big difference between selfish and self-centered.
Yeah.
Right. I think the world would be a much healthier place for all if we all were more selfish. Right.
What do you mean? How so?
Something I'm actually learning right now in business, and it's been quite a hard lesson to learn. And I mean, this is in real time. Like, I was journaling about this morning. So I've recently launched my agency, right? Momentum, for, coaches and creators who are currently part-time, right? Call it. But, they're working a job they hate, but there's a calling inside of them for something bigger, for something greater. And what what I did initially was I took all of my resources, finances, abilities, skills, team, and for our initial clients, right? There's 8 of them that we started with. I put all my resources into the client, and I, didn't really put a lot of effort into our own development as a company, as a brand, as my own
it's like,
image, right?
Identity,
and what I quickly found was that I was attempting to lead others in doing something I believed in, but had yet to do myself.
Demonstrated success.
Yeah. And because my initial belief, and this is a belief that's now changed for me recently. My initial belief is that if I invested my resources into me first, that would be self-centered. Right? Who am I to gain, have, whatever? But what I quickly realized was that by not investing in my own development, my own opportunities, my own progression first, I didn't know how to lead others in doing it for themselves, although I wanted it for them. Right. So what's quickly changed, because it had to, because if it didn't, we wouldn't survive. Literally, financially, it's not sustainable. Yeah. And what it's like, if I was more selfish, meaning, taking true ownership of my abilities, of my opportunities, of my skill sets that have been developed over the years, the relationships that have been developed over years. And I was able to act with intention, right? To grow with purpose, to collaborate with the intention of transformation, not transaction, right? There you go.
Yeah.
And only by going first will I understand how to guide others. Right. So that shift for me of like, going first is not self-centered. If the intention is to learn something that you can turn and guide someone else, to do the same.
Or give them. Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
And so that was a big shift for me, because I believe that investing my own resources and, taking advantage of my skill sets was a self-centered act, meaning arrogant, cocky, self-serving, because in doing so, you naturally start to gain some attention, right? And I've always felt that attention made me appear as if it was about me, and that was something I was unwilling to accept. But not allowing the growth or the attention or the opportunities to flow naturally, I learned that what I was actually doing is eliminating or severely impacting my ability to support others in a meaningful way. Right. And, so that's kind of what I mean.
Robbing yourself from the experience of like learning, like what's on the other side of this, right? I think that we sometimes, I know that I have feared the success of a thing, or even in some ways pursuing something wholeheartedly, because if I do and it's successful, then what? Right?
Then what?
Is this like, then what do I do then? What does that mean I am then? How do I sustain that then? And you have all of these things that you talk yourself out of the, like, if it does actually work, which is ridiculous, but it is true. And I don't think I'm the only person that struggled with this or that has struggles with this. And so this is what I kind of went back to the idea of like, am I okay with what is happening now? Am I good with what is happening now? Am I comfortable with what the next step requires? That all of this, like several steps ahead shit, all of this, like trying to figure out a workout, like, well, what are they going to say if we win, then what? Or if we make and I'm able to earn, or what, like all of that stuff, we will deal with that stuff when we do that stuff. This stuff right here, this stuff right here.
Yeah.
Let's get to that. Let's get in this and let's make this feel the best we possibly can. And maybe even finding ways to implement little guardrails or not guardrails, little touchstones, so that once we get this, let's check in with ourselves and figure out how do we feel. Let's check in with our team and figure out how do we feel. Let's check in with our viewer. How do you feel? Right? Are as many of our intentions still in alignment with how we started this thing, or have they grown into being something even way cooler? But are we still all on the same page? Do you know what I mean?
Are you a coach who has been struggling to do everything yourself? I mean, all of the content, the emails, the marketing, not to mention every time you open your phone, there's a new social media strategy that someone is pitching that just makes you feel like you'll never be able to keep up. When all you really care about is helping people in a meaningful way while building the kind of coaching business your family can depend on. I'm Matthew Paetz, the founder of Momentum, a growth agency that specializes in helping coaches just like you break through your first 100K. If you're a coach who is tired of trying to figure it all out themselves and you just want to build a business that works, then I'm going to encourage you to click the link in our show notes to take your 100K coaching assessment to find out if you're ready to unlock your six-figure potential today.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you mean when you say selfish versus self-centered. I think that my whole job, the majority of my career has been about amplifying the voice, the work, the dream of other people. And, I've grown to find a way to describe what I believe my purpose on this planet is, which is to be a reflection of the love and the light that has been shown to me in my life, so that someone may become more comfortable, more bold in themselves, so they go in relentless pursuit of their dream. Do you know what I mean? Like that's my statement. Like and I'm that, like, I got that clear about it. I got that granular about it. Like the things that I say yes to, the things that, even couple to thruple, like that, like, don't get me wrong. It's a dating show on Peacock. You can stream all 10 episodes now.
Get it?
It's a dating show on Peacock that I did, not because it would be like this huge hookup show, but because I wanted to see what would happen when people were able to be open and honest about what they want in their relationship, what they see for themselves in their relationship, or how they wanted to show up for their partner in their relationship. What happens if we could be just that honest? I don't give a damn if they end up in polyamory. I don't give a damn if they end up swinging. I don't give a damn if they end up serial monogamy, or get married or split up. That really wasn't my concern. I wanted to know what happened when people were able to challenge the idea they thought about a thing, or the idea that was given to them about a thing, and they started to define it for themselves. And so I wanted to amplify that intention on an inherently queer television show, because it had never been done before. And that's the filter that, like, even that, you know what I mean, was about how do I offer my energy and experience to boost the desire or the intention of other people.
It's interesting that you describe it this way, because one, that has been my experience as a friend and a brother of yours for many years now. And it actually, I almost asked this on the hike that we were on this past weekend. But I had a gut feeling. I was like, nope, stop. Like, save this, save this. Yeah.
Wait for the podcast.
Yeah. Save this, just in case there's an opportunity. And I was going to ask you, do you, because you're obviously someone who, in my opinion, you've always been unapologetically yourself. You've always been unapologetic about your joy, your light, your energy, your everything. Like, you walk into a room and the room lifts, right? And it's always been
so strange to hear you say that. And you say that to me. You've said that to me before, and I always feel like it is so strange, because I feel like I struggled for a very long time, and still do, at like being myself. That, like, I have sometimes a real crisis of or conflict with, you're doing too much, reel it in, but I can't help it. Like, I'm too much. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I'll tell you this. I don't know what your experience of that is, but I can tell you why I say unapologetically you has been my experience is because I genuinely cannot recall one moment where it felt that whatever energy you were bringing to a room or a conversation was performative.
Mm.
It always felt pure, even when it was the most. Like there was nothing performative in the energy. And that's what I've always admired, because me walking into a room and I'll be 100, I remember many a night where, you know, we go out dancing or whatever. There's one in particular, I forget what city we were in, but I don't even remember the club, but I remember the moment. And we were with a group of your friends and I came to hang out, and, you know, we went to this dance club and we were dancing, and your presence gave me permission to be bigger, to dance more freely. And I remember specifically because where we were was, in my recollection, it was a predominantly Black club. And here I am, like the white guy, right, with all of
Not
the
For
not
those who
black,
are listening.
other. But for me, there was a lot of like, you know, desire to fit in and insecurity. And I know many can relate to that for different reasons. But I remember it was like, oh, because you, like, I was under your wing in that experience, I felt free to like just fucking go for it, whatever that was. And it was a great time. And it, you know, and it felt like I wasn't the only one you were given that permission to. Right. Mm-hmm. And that permission wasn't you saying, hey, it's okay, do it. That permission was you were doing it. And it was like, you either got to be yourself here, whatever that looks like, or you're going to be really uncomfortable. Right. Because there is no mask. And that's what I've experienced with you, no matter where we are, what we do. And it's something that I've always admired, because your presence disrupts other people's mask. Right. And I don't say mask as in that they're doing something wrong or deceitful or hiding, but it's, they're afraid to be their truth, whatever that truth may be. And your energy disrupts that guard that so many have, that like, I can't be a certain way because I don't know how other people are going to take it. And you come in and you're like, I'm just gonna come be me and let you figure out how you want to respond to that, while simultaneously it not being conflict.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I think that has been, you know, something that I've witnessed and been taking note of and learning from, I mean, literally since the day that we met. And, you know, I've seen you rise to the occasions. And in my experience, I can't think of one time that I witnessed fear in you, even if it was there, like, and maybe being more you as your response to fear, which I think is, I mean, if there's one gift I wish anyone could ever receive, is to have someone like you in their lives that shows them that response to fear can be more of you instead of be less of you.
Yeah.
And
whoa.
So the question that I had on that came to me on the hike was, I almost asked you, I was like, do you view yourself as an amplifier? And you answered that question because what hit me was, although when you come into a space, you're not afraid of being the center of attention, but the attention is never about you. You're always amplifying what is close to you. And I actually heard, there's a gentleman who I look up to in the entrepreneur space. His name's Daniel Priestley. And he is the author and creator of a concept called key person of influence. And he has this beautiful analogy when he talks about the key person of influence as an amplifier. And what he says, he relates it to the city of Paris. And he says a key person of influence is the Eiffel Tower. And he said the Eiffel Tower in Paris doesn't actually make a lot of money, right? The tower itself, like it's a few euros to go up and go to the top and do all that thing. He's like, but the Eiffel Tower itself is really economically a loss leader for the city of Paris, right? But what it does is it amplifies the value of everything close to it. You may come to see the Eiffel Tower, right? But you're going to the restaurants, you're going to the hotels, you're going to, the museums and all the things that surround the Eiffel Tower. And that is what makes, the bulk of the revenue of the city and those kind of things. So the Eiffel Tower brings people in, but it's never about the Eiffel Tower. And that's genuinely how I see you. And quite frankly, it's one reason why, I enjoy spending so much time with you, is because your presence gives me the permission to be more me and allows me to not just like be it, but actually explore what that even is. Right? Like you're a safe place to figure it out, right? To test some shit, to say some shit, to dance in a new way, to sing a little louder or even at all. Like, and that's the part that every time we leave each other's presence, I'm like, I know a little bit more about who I am authentically now because I spent time around Scott today. Whew.
Okay, so you're going to rename this podcast to Tears and some shit.
Tears and tequila.
Oh my God. Okay. That is a really I can't even look at you.
That's fine.
That is a really kind thing to say. And I love you so much. Truly, truly, truly. So the fact that has ever been your experience in our time together is really cool to me. It's really meaningful to me. I was just describing our relationship to someone, a mentor of mine, and how you have been my big brother, right? You are literally my big brother. You are my brother. And the part that is, and maybe this isn't unique to our experience. Maybe siblings have this kind of experience often, but because we are not blood brothers, there isn't this necessarily this inherent hierarchy of like, I'm the big brother and I'm always the big brother and you do what the big brother says, but that we're the kind of brothers that alternate or shift big brother to little brother to big brother. Like I'm constantly learning from you, to hear that you are constantly learning from me. There are times where I have felt like we shift in like how we approach our relationship. And so brother can shift into like, today you the big brother and I need you in this way, or today you're the little brother and you need in this way. I don't have any other relationship that's like this. And I've never done a podcast quite like this. And I say that to say that, like, I want you to be aware of, I don't know if every interview you do for this will have this same intention or will have elements of this throughout, but you're identifying you're calling out someone's impact. You're giving name and face to someone's how they have touched or moved in a way that has shifted. You talk about change making. Um, it is a powerful, powerful thing. And I think that people are going to be totally thrown off by, by it, because I think it's unlike anything I've ever done before. That is for sure. And I hope that you will continue to just hold space for people in conversation this way, because I think it's pretty fucking. You're gonna ruin a lot of mornings, and make a lot of afternoons and nights.
Well, I deeply appreciate that. And, the thing that I want to do differently with this, and it's not about different comparison to other, but the thing that
Right.
I really want to do differently, right? I'm inspired by people who have achieved levels of success in their life that are uncommon. And it's not about the status. It's not about, the clout or any of that shit. What I'm genuinely inspired by is knowing that there, the amount of courage it takes to achieve anything meaningful in your life. And when I say meaningful, I mean, we all get to define what that means for ourselves. Right. And the reason why I am really encouraged to speak with people who have achieved meaningful things is because it's really easy to view and want to talk about those surface level milestones, right?
Yeah,
What's
accolades and
the
awards or
accolades
whatever.
that's a much better term. And what I genuinely care about is the person's story, right? Their truth. And, having had the experience now and the great fortune to meet people at all varying levels of, call it, success, right? What that has given me is a perspective.
Yeah.
And, even I shared this with you before, like when I was escorting, right? The demographic that we're hiring, the time, the boyfriend experience, as it was so eloquently put in their marketing. That service catered to those who were in the financial elite, the 1%, as many would, call it. But the thing that was most interesting to me was in those experiences, what it really was an opportunity to meet and like see people for the person. Right. And I had many in that life tell me that the reason why they chose to invest in these experiences had nothing to do with the physicality or the sex or any of that stuff. But for them, it was the one relationship dynamic that they knew going in what it was. It was understood and clear. There was no fear of, someone trying to climb the ladder and achieve something, through them or because of them, but rather it was, it was an opportunity. Many of them would say, it's like, I actually just get to not perform. I can just talk. I can just be, I can just share and it not be anything. So it was actually much more of a therapeutic relationship than it was a physical. Right. And I bring all this up to say, again, having gotten to know people who were in the public eye, what I learned was about the human being that was behind the fame or the persona. And without fail, there was triumph and tragedy and, things that they just wish the world understood. Right. And that was the part that really lit me up. Like those are the things I wanted to know more about. And, the intention behind this podcast is not to, showcase people that, others may know, right, in some way, shape, or form, but rather
Right.
showcase the human being behind the hard work and the sacrifice and the commitment and the the example that change making isn't about changing the world. It's about changing yours. Period. Right?
Period.
Because,
Woo-wee.
you know, and something on that note, that, you know, is another thing that you've represented for me. And when I do my best to observe kind of a theme in your life, right, as an outsider, as an observer, that you seem to do very, very well is, you know, we've talked a lot about goals and milestones and what we want to achieve and our visions in life, right?
Yeah.
But I actually don't hear you share or speak into that a lot. But what I do hear and what I do see that I think is even more powerful than pursuing potential, is one way to describe our vision or goals,
Yeah.
is you never speak on achieving a lot. Like, it's never about reaching your potential, but it's always been about raising your standards.
Mm.
And when I look at your life, what I noticed and what I see is a man who is ruthlessly committed to raising his standards. And you've done so. It's never like, I'm here, you can't sit with me. It's, I'm here, now let's go.
Yeah.
Right? Like you never leave people behind, but instead you hold them accountable to raise their own. Right? And you allow them the space to grow into that, right? Without judgment. But I've also noticed that, as uncomfortable and as heartbreaking as it may be and is at times, you don't wait for them to figure theirs out. You hold space for them to figure it out, but you don't wait. You're going to continue to raise your standards in hopes that, at least this is how I imagine, in hopes that those who you really care about do the same. But it doesn't have to look the same.
No. I mean, it almost never is the same. Like, right? Like, there are 6 people that have my job in America. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there are a lot of people that do some semblance or, that there are properties of our jobs or our careers that overlap. But as far as like, do what I do the way that I do it for the, you know, what, all of that, there aren't a whole lot. I say that to say that there isn't always, I'm not ever looking for someone's path or even their energy necessarily to match mine. What I think I am adamant about is that your intention, though, is in alignment. It doesn't have to be the same, but I think that while people get clear on that, it can be unpredictable. People's behavior can become unpredictable, and it can be fertile ground for me. This is just me being 100% honest, and maybe this is not the place for this, but like,
always the place for that.
Right? It can be hurtful what happens as a result of people figuring their shit out, and things that can be said, things that can be done, things that can be misinterpreted, while some people are figuring portions of their thing out, while people are trying to bring their personality and their purpose into alignment with the, you know, pursuit of the passion. I did not mean for that to sound so illiterate. But I say that I'm saying that to say that, like, there are sometimes, and to speak to that in particular, I have been in very sensitive growth periods, what feel like they're like super fertile ground, which means that like anything that is planted while in this period of my life will grow, the good and the bad. And so I sometimes get super protective of that space while I'm trying to water and nurture this thing to see if it's going to be the thing that that pokes through the ground. So I think that 100% for me, there is an element of like, I love you. That doesn't mean I have to be all on you. in order to for that to be love for me. But also like I understand that the life that I have, or the life that I'm creating, is my responsibility.
Mm.
And I really have to, no one else is going to protect that the way that I'm going to protect that. No one else is going to hold that the way that I'm going to hold that. And it's no shade, it's no love lost, but like I'm really trying to make sure this is good. And we all have those experiences with people where you're like, you're not in a place right now where you're going to manage this well, so I'm not going to hand this to you. Do you know what I mean?
I absolutely
I'm not
do.
gonna require this of you, because we still, figuring some shit out. And once that portion is done, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, once that portion
Well,
is
I
done, like
do.
we still right here.
I do. And actually, that leads me to something that I want to apologize for. And, for years, as you have, continued to commit, and take responsibility for your life, right? And achieving your dreams and your mission. There was definitely a long season, and not that long ago, I mean, within the last couple of years, where there were times that I got really upset and even offended by, sometimes the distance between us in communication, right? And when I look back on it, the times in which I was the most hurt it was all rooted in fear of our distance mean I was losing our relationship,
Mm,
right? And I was interpreting the distance as there being distance within our relationship, which is what, the pain that I was feeling. But as I sit back now and reflect from a different perspective, what I realized was the times where I was most offended were also the times I was not taking responsibility for my own.
mm.
And those who were taking responsibility for their own and growing, yourself being one of the main ones, the pain was the fact that, again, I made it about me. I made your life, your dreams, you pursuing your goals about me. And the apology that I believe I owe you is in times where, um, I made, comments or, kind of passive aggressive statements around, you're not calling back or texting or those kind of things. And when I look back on it now, as I sit here with, messages on my phone that I've not responded to,
Woo!
right?
Woo!
But
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a transition, and it's not that the people aren't worthy of response. That's not it at all. But they are, and you get to them, right? But when you are committed to and committed to your responsibilities, there's different levels to that, and that also doesn't equate to a lack of love or care or respect. And if anything, it has taught me that, again, given permission, that to take responsibility for your own is a courageous act.
Yeah.
And it's courageous because that inevitably means you're going to disrupt relationship dynamics that probably you care about deeply, but you cannot take responsibility for those. And you have to allow them to navigate whatever it is for them in hopes that they reflect and see the deeper truth behind the experience is not one of, you know, disconnect or you don't belong here or any of that, but rather, if you are not one who is actively taking responsibility for your own, then you simply won't understand the act of taking responsibility for mine
Or sharing, you know what
or
I mean?
sharing.
That, or sharing
Mm-hmm.
that. So, yeah, man, I think it is it's like it's all learning, right? It's all
Mm-hmm.
about trying to figure out the best way, the better way, the truer way. I think learning from the situation, so we're not doing the same shit over and over and over. And so I love you, and
Mm-hmm.
I apologize. You know what I mean? Like it. I am sorry for not being there and not uh, uh, um, um, making sure that you knew that you and felt that um, brother connection
Mm-hmm.
always. So we out here, and I love you, and we still at it. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Ain't never gonna be nothing but.
Well, and this is again an acknowledgement more than anything else to continue, not that you wouldn't, but to continue to relentlessly pursue you and allow it to inspire others, right? Because that's what you ultimately do no matter where you go. And, I think that is the thing that, so many, they never reach that point. They get to the fear, they get to the challenge, and they start to retreat to make others more comfortable,
Or
right?
themselves,
Right,
let's be
100%.
honest. Or
And
themselves.
that's something too that, again, you've always represented. And I know we're coming up on time here, and one thing that I want to ask, because I really want people to maybe hear what comes. I want people to hear what comes through, and I don't even know what it's going to be. All right, but you brought up something earlier, and that's where this question stems from. So I'll ask the question, and then I'll connect the dots.
Okay.
But in your life, in your professional or personal, what was what would you define as your big break? That moment where
I haven't had it yet.
love.
I haven't had it yet. Mm-mm. Nope. Still working at that. Still working at that. Um,
How would
I,
you
I haven't
define
had
a
a
big
big.
break?
I don't know because I don't have an I can't say that I've experienced a big break. I think my life, my career has been incremental, one small step in front of another small step. I've not had like a big splash onto something like, oh, snap, right? Like everything is kind of like one thing has informed something two steps ahead, or that kind of thing. So I can't say that I have had, when I think about someone, a big break, I think about something where it seemed like they went from something super obscure or almost nowhere to like they're everywhere and life is totally changed. And in this moment, um,
You don't think your life has
uh,
totally changed?
yeah, but I think that my life has totally, it didn't, 100% my life has totally changed. But like being raised by a single mother in the Midwest, now
Mm-hmm.
living in Tarzana, California, you know what I mean? Like it is, yeah, my life is totally different, but also my life is exactly what 2 steps ago informed. It's not
Mm.
some major explosion from um uh being a 16-year-old and then turning 17 and being like, boom, here's my first single, I'm a multi-platinum recording artist, or I did this movie and now every director wants to work with me. Like it's literally been this slow burn. It's more how I would describe my life, and it is exactly what I wanted.
This is
Uh-oh.
why I let this.
Uh-oh. Anthony is getting mad at me.
Fair. Well, I ended on this.
But no, we can come back to this. I'm unfortunately have to cut this session short, but I
Yeah.
would like to return to this conversation. If you are open to that, I'm open to that.
No, 100%. And I'll just say this again. That's just proof that your focus has never been your potential. It's always been raising your standards.
We out here, baby. Like it's about like how we can be taking authority in our own life to create the best life that we possibly can. And I know that takes work. I know that it takes time. My expectation is not some boom, but that it feels like a nice little garden that is growing and maturing as you walk through it.
You gotta trim it, shape it.
Fertilize it. Nurture it.
I love it. Well, brother, I love you. I appreciate you. And yeah, go raise standards.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, baby. Change making. We out here.
Thank you.
Come on now.